Another Monday means another mock draft Monday here on the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed already, if you like mock drafts and NFL draft content in general. A lot of people ask me about doing a Senior Bowl video and East-West Shrine game, of course, as well. And I considered that. It's just with the other videos I was already uploading, just didn't really fit into the schedule. So unfortunately, can't make that video. However, I'll talk about some of that in here as we go through this mock draft. And doing it on Pro Football Focus, it's a common question I get. No trades in this one, but it should be a fun one. So I mapped out kind of what I want to do in advance, like I typically do. A lot of thought goes into these. However, I might make one or two adjustments on the fly. We're going to start with Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC. I just still think the Bears are going to end up taking a quarterback. It's just in their best interest financially to do so. And there is a total chance that that doesn't end up happening. I think a more recent theory since Cliff Kingsbury got hired to be the Commanders' offensive coordinator could be, well, what if the Commanders move up one spot? The Bears can then still get a haul for the #1 overall pick, probably multiple first rounders, maybe not 3 total, but 2 at least, you'd think. And maybe they keep Justin Fields, or maybe they have a similar grade on the quarterbacks and they just take a QB at 2. Wouldn't typically be the way that's done, but it's a possibility. But let's say they stick with Justin Fields. That's kind of more of the area where you'd see that get accomplished. Commanders trade up to 1. Bears move down to 2. Keep Justin Fields, draft a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. That's an option. And it'd be an interesting one, but more expensive certainly than just drafting Caleb Williams at 1 if you believe in him. But maybe they don't. We'll see. At number 2, I'll mix it up today. I'll go with Jaden Daniels, quarterback from LSU. Heisman winner, was incredible last season at LSU. Really evolved as a passer. We know what he can do as a runner. You'd like to see him take fewer hits on the run, though. Look at what Lamar Jackson does. That guy is maybe the most mobile quarterback we've ever seen in the NFL, and he really doesn't take that many hits. He has been injured a couple seasons, but they haven't been from taking big hits. It's like stepping on his ankle weird, or he had an injury by stepping on, I think, the first down marker. Weird stuff, but it hasn't been from taking hits. Lamar is so good at getting out of the way. Jaden Daniels could be better in that department, but maybe he's a better fit for what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do. Maybe you lean Jaden Daniels. Not saying they will or they won't. Just going to experiment with that today. But that would leave Drake May available at number 3 for the Patriots. It's highly believed and speculated that the first 3 picks in this draft will be all quarterbacks, hinging on the fact that the Patriots will take a QB. Again, things could change. Things could change with the Bears. Maybe the Commanders even don't want a quarterback. However, it's the most valuable position in football. There are some good ones at the top of this draft. They're probably going to end up going off the board. I think right now, and I'll probably change things up between here and the NFL draft in late April, but I think the first 3 picks are going to be a quarterback, and I think the 4th pick is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. I think these are probably the first 4 players off the board. Again, things could change, and if the Patriots, decide to go with a receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. over a quarterback, that could put Malik Neighbors into the top 4 or an offensive tackle. But these, I think, will be the first 4 players off the board, if I had to guess. And I think May and Daniels might be the only interchangeable ones. May, I still think will be the number 2 overall pick. Again, I'm mixing it up today to get a different name in there. But Williams, Daniels, May, Harrison Jr., I think will be the first 4. At number 5, things get interesting. However, I believe it's going to be one of these 3 players. Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, or Brock Bowers, depending on if you want a wide receiver or a tight end. However, here's where things get even more interesting, is the Chargers are currently expected to hire Greg Roman. Now, will that be as the offensive coordinator or a different role? It remains to be seen, but Greg Roman is expected to join the Chargers staff. Now, I have it from a reliable source with the Ravens when I was talking to someone I know at the Ravens a couple of years ago. Greg Roman does not like wide receivers, prioritizes tight ends in his offense, and there is a generational prospect at tight end in this draft, and his name is Brock Bowers. I think the fit makes so much sense for the Chargers. We know how much Jim Harbaugh loves to utilize tight ends in his offenses historically as well. So obviously that could change depending on who the offensive coordinator is. But after drafting a receiver in the first round last year, they might just go with, hey, we're not going to get Brock Bowers ever in the draft. We might be able to take a really good receiver, next year. Now, not saying they would do that, but I think Brock Bowers, with the Chargers really needing a tight end, with Brock Bowers being an incredible tight end prospect, with Greg Roman expected to join the Charger staff, who loves to utilize tight ends in his offense, it makes a ton of sense for this to be Brock Bowers. Could still be Neighbors or Odunze, but Brock Bowers makes a ton of sense to me right now, and that would free up the Giants to go with either Neighbors or Odunze. I think Malik Neighbors is the second best receiver in this class, and I think he's not tremendously far off from number one. I think he's that good of a player, and there are a lot of guys who love Rome Odunze as well. I also love Odunze. I just think Neighbors is probably just one step above him as a prospect, but they're both incredible players. At number 7, the Titans, I'm going to go with Joe Alt. Joe Alt had a really, really good 2023. He's emerging into that OT1 conversation, and it's pretty close right now between Olu Fashanu, Talisa Fuaga as well. Even Tyler Guyton could get pushed up the board after a great Senior Bowl. I don't think he's going to be the first tackle off the board, but he's got big time upside as well. Could be the second, maybe even the third. Offensive tackle, there's a ton of movement right now based on how people kind of perceive things, and I generally tend to yield to people who know better than I do in regard to offensive line play. I just need to improve that area of evaluation. I feel like there are a bunch of really good tackles in this class. It can be tough to order those guys sometimes, but Joe Alt certainly would not surprise me as being the first tackle off the board. Neither would Olu. Neither, at this point, really would Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State. What a dominant Senior Bowl he had. We know what he can do as a run blocker. Was incredible in the one-on-ones as well as a pass protector. What a player. At number 8, the Falcons probably would like a quarterback here. No trades in this draft, and this could be what the order actually ends up looking like. We might not see a trade inside the top 5, 6, or 7. That's a possibility. The 3 quarterbacks that really would be worth taking here at number 8 are all off the board. So do you reach for a QB if you want one? Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, probably not Michael Penix. Or do you go with a different position of need? And I think it ultimately ends up being a different player than a quarterback, and Dallas Turner just makes a ton of sense to me. Yes, Rome Odunze, I could totally see being off the board here. Raheem Morris was hired as the new head coach of the Falcons, defensive guy. Maybe they opt to take arguably the best defensive player in the draft over a really, really talented receiver. Now, I know it's not as exciting as taking a skill player on offense, but Dallas Turner is a really incredible athlete and player and would really improve the Falcons defense right away. Really, really talented player and would be a really good fit in the Raheem Morris defense as well. We've seen what he can do. The Rams have been a force to be reckoned with for some time with players you wouldn't particularly expect, and obviously Aaron Donald as well, don't get me wrong, but Dallas Turner would be a big-time playmaker off the edge for Atlanta, and they really haven't had that for a while. At number 9, that would free up the Bears to go Rome Odunze. And again, I could totally see Odunze at 8, or maybe even Arian Arnold could be interesting. I know, again, people won't like that because it's not a skill player in offense, but still could be in that area if they wanted to take a corner, although I don't think that they would there. I think it's an option. But again, I would probably lean a different direction, and I did. Bears teaming up Rome Odunze with Caleb Williams. Already have DJ Moore. Really, really fun offense at that point. At number 10, I think the Jets might lean to Talisa Fuaga here. There have been some dots being connected between general manager Joe Douglas and Talisa Fuaga. Is that just smoke, or is there actually fire there causing that smoke? We'll have to see. But Fuaga does make a ton of sense for the Jets. He's a really, really good offensive tackle who is even better in pass pro than I had thought, but mauler in the run game and would be probably an instant starter on that offensive line. So he's got big time potential. A lot of people love him. He's, as I've said the entire process, the most fun offensive lineman to watch in this class. He just bodies people. No way around it. The Jets have been needing upgrades on the offensive line for quite some time. Uaga would certainly fit the bill there. At number 11, this consistently has been one of the tougher spots in the entire mock draft cycle so far for me to actually mock, because I think that a quarterback probably is not worth taking at this spot. And that complicates things because that's a team who needs a quarterback. If you don't bring Kirk Cousins back, who's going to play QB next year? Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy. Again, I don't believe Michael Penix will be a first-round guy. So, do you reach on a QB because you need a QB, or do you opt to go a different direction? Now, I'm going to give them Jared Verse. It makes a ton of sense. Could be Laiatu Latu maybe as well, but I think, again, injuries could hold him slightly down the board if it's close. Verse is a really talented player. Strong, powerful hands. Big body on the defensive line coming off the edge. And Daniil Hunter, going to be a free agent. Marcus Davenport, DJ Wanham, I believe, as well. All of these guys have the potential to be playing on different teams in 2024. They don't have really anything on the edge, and that is a tremendous problem that can be solved here in some capacity at number 11. Number 12, I think the Broncos are in a similar spot as the Vikings were, where I don't really know what to give them because they need a quarterback, but it's a little bit too early. In the end, we settle for maybe the best corner in the entire draft, Terrion Arnold from Alabama. I know Daniel Jeremiah is extremely high on Arnold. I think Wiggins could still be the first corner off the board, maybe even Cooper DeJean as well. But Terrion Arnold had such an incredible season for Alabama this past season, has good size, certainly good athleticism, and is tenacious, as I like to say, which is a really good quality for a defensive back. You like those kind of junkyard dog type players, right? And Terrion Arnold will get in your face and play physical and has great ball skills. These are great attributes of a cornerback. And Terrion Arnold, to a team that really could use help on the boundary on the other side of Patrick Surtain, could be looking at Terrion Arnold as the best player on the board and also a fit with their team at number 12. I could also see a reach on a quarterback there, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, or even Byron Murphy, maybe the first interior defensive lineman off the board. Jerzon Newton maybe in that conversation as well. Could even be an edge player if they like Laiatu Latu enough. Available of these players still here. The Raiders at number 13. Again, same deal with the Vikings and Broncos. They need a quarterback. Do they take a quarterback at this spot? Ultimately, I don't believe they do with a player like Olu Fashanu still available, falling down the board a little bit in this mock draft here. They need help on the offensive line. Yes, Colton Miller is a great left tackle. Olu could go over and start on that right side right away. Really good athlete. Still developing a bit as a player. As a run blocker, I think he was better in 2023 than 2022. And he's a really solid pass protecting offensive lineman. Now, does need to get better at handling power rushers, as I've talked about on this channel over the course of the year. JT Tuimoloau gave him some problems in the Ohio State game. Back-to-back years, really. But Fashanu still is as good of a pass protector, really, as anybody in this class, and is certainly very good value at 13. At number 14, we have the New Orleans Saints. Just like the previous three teams, they also need a quarterback, but might not be able to take one. Now, I've been back and forth on this. I think it's either a tackle or an edge rusher, given the way the board has fallen. Laiatu Latu makes sense because he's so good. A technician off the edge, good bend as well. And they also really need offensive line help. Left tackle, certainly up in the air. And right tackle, even with Ryan Ramczyk having bad knees, also potentially up in the air and certainly is long-term. So do they opt to go with a tackle to help the offense or a pass rusher to help out that defense? This is a really, really close call. Because J.C. Latham and maybe even Tyler Guyton are real possibilities here at 14, or Laiatu Latu for me. Or you could potentially reach on a quarterback, Bo Nix, or as I keep mentioning, J.J. McCarthy. These are players I think could get into the first round. We'll talk more about those guys later. Tyler Guyton had such a great week at the Senior Bowl. But do I go Laiatu Latu? Because he's so good. Also, didn't have a bad Senior Bowl either. This is a very tough call. In the one that I did previously, I had them going with the tackle, and I think I often have them going with the tackle. I've had them going Jared Verse as well when he gets there. I'm going to go Laiatu Latu. I certainly think this could be an offensive tackle or maybe even a quarterback, but Laiatu Latu does make sense at this spot. He, although has some injury concerns, has stayed pretty healthy. You could say the same thing about Michael Penix. Have to see where these guys end up going in the draft. Latu is a very, very good prospect, though. As I mentioned, he's a technician, phenomenal hand usage, and the thing that stands out the most when you watch Laiatu Latu is his ability to go to a counter move if the first one's not there. He's got a seamless transition into a number of different things. If he tries to spin, he can often swipe off that if he goes back if the spin doesn't work. He can even reverse those. He can do a cross chop. He can rip right on through and bend to the quarterback, flatten the edge. He can really do everything that you'd want from a pass rush standpoint. Really, really good player. That's who we're going to go with at 14. At number 15, found this fit in the last mock, and I really, really like it. It's Cooper DeJean from Iowa. He's a corner that can play on the boundary. He's a really good athlete. I think he could also move back to safety. When you have a combination of instincts and tackling ability the way Cooper DeJean does, your best fit might be at safety. Just you can utilize all those skills a little bit more. And any stick on the boundary, in my opinion, yes. They need help really all over the secondary except for the nickel. And I think Cooper DeJean could even be a good nickel corner. So they've got a number of different ways they could utilize him, but he fits the Chris Ballard meta of size and athleticism, and he also is a fit in Indianapolis. So Cooper DeJean ends up being the pick for me there. At number 16, another team that I've struggled for in this process. I usually just give them Troy Faatanu, and I'm going to mix it up today, and we're going to go with defensive line, and that's going to be Byron Murphy from Texas. He was supposed to be a Senior Bowl participant, ended up bowing out a couple of weeks before, saying, I'm injured, can't participate, and his stock has not suffered in the slightest. In fact, he's finally starting to get more recognition, and when you look at Byron Murphy, you see a player that wins the leverage battle over and over and over again. He's about 6', 6'1", 310-ish pounds, maybe a little bit lighter than that, and will consistently get under the pads of offensive linemen and make plays on the football. Sometimes that's as a pass rusher, sometimes that's as a run defender. He is a complete player on the interior of the defensive line, and for that reason, could be the first one off the board. I'm glad he's finally getting hype. I should have given him more hype earlier in the cycle. I try not to put my Texas bias out there in front other than throwing the horns up at any given opportunity. But when I'm doing these mock drafts and talking about players, I push that bias aside. Obviously, I want them to perform well and get drafted higher in some cases, but you know, I don't want to say, hey, because this player went to my favorite school, they're better than everybody else, right? I certainly would not say that, but Byron Murphy is certainly a very good player and could be the first interior defensive lineman off the board. He ends up going to a team that could use help on the interior, and they really moved their defensive line around. And I think with Leonard Williams being a free agent after 2024, even though they traded for him, of course, Pete Carroll has been switched out for Mike McDonald. He's a defensive guy. You could use more help on the interior. When I look at Byron Murphy, I see somebody that Mike McDonald could maybe see Justin Madubuike in, who enjoyed a breakout season in 2023 and is going to get paid by Baltimore or somebody else. Byron Murphy could be, you know, your next Justin Madubuike on the interior. So I think it's a good fit there in Seattle. The defensive coach goes with a defender instead of the offensive lineman like I've kind of been giving them. At number 17, I'm going with a really awesome fit here. It's Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma to the Jaguars. They could use help on the offensive line, particularly at tackle. A number of question marks with both injury and whatever is going on with Cam Robinson, a number of different things. Now, Trent Baalke was seen at the Senior Bowl following the offensive line around. Tyler Guyton was a name to watch at the Senior Bowl. He had a really solid week overall. And on top of that, he fits the size profile that a guy like Trent Baalke typically really, really loves. 6'7", over 325 pounds with excellent movement skills for that size. He's going to be a player that ends up going in the top 20 probably. And the Jags get lucky here as he falls. He's an incredible fit. At number 18, this was another one that I struggled with because I think it could be J.C. Latham. I also think that Troy Faatanu is a good fit here. I think Jerzon Newton is a good fit here. But ultimately, with Latham still on the board, I know I've made this fit for the Bengals plenty of times, but it's just a fit that makes a lot of sense. Another Alabama offensive tackle. We've seen them draft Jonah Williams, Andre Smith years back. Latham is a big-bodied, another mauler like Fuaga. Really as strong as they come in this draft, and would be a starting right tackle for the Bengals sooner rather than later. It's certainly a position of need, and for the same reasons that they might like Orlando Brown Jr., you can see some similar qualities in J.C. Latham. He is as big as they come. He is 6'6" or 6'7", maybe even 340 pounds. Need to check these outside of PFF. I've seen him listed even bigger, significantly bigger. I think even closer to 360, I swear. The Alabama website lists Latham at 360 pounds, so we'll see what's right at the combine. I suppose I'm sure he got an invite. And then the Rams is where things get very interesting. Now, they have needs on the offensive line. A tackle would be great here. But is it too early for Jordan Morgan? Do they want to develop Amarius Mims? Both are options. They have serious needs at cornerback. Nate Wiggins is here. I think that's a good pick. Quinyon Mitchell was maybe the best defensive player at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. He had an incredible week, and I've been hyping him up for so long now, and maybe you guys will finally believe me that he could very well go over Kool-Aid McKinstry in the draft, and is probably likely to. So, very interesting, but they also have needs at quarterback. And is this the first quarterback domino? Now, Matthew Stafford is still very good, no question. However, not only does Matthew Stafford have a serious risk of injury based off of what we've seen in the past few years, he's also not a spring chicken anymore. He's like 36 or 37 years old, and with an injury history, do the Rams try to draft his replacement of the future? I think that's certainly an option. J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, certainly are options here. It's just, and I know everyone wants the top quarterbacks or a quarterback that isn't Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. It's tough. It's tough. And what would the Rams do here? Because you basically have two schools of thought. One is prepare for the future, and that's probably drafting a quarterback, or try to win in the present, because they made a pretty decent run to even get to the playoffs last year, and with an upgraded secondary or a starting offensive lineman, that might help you get back. Stafford will be 36 in 2 days, by the way, not 37 yet. I think this could easily be a quarterback. I'm going to end up going with Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. Had an incredible week down in Mobile. Again, looked to be the best defensive player there. He was amazing. Combination of size, speed, and ability to really break on the football. He goes downhill so well, and I think could be one of the first corners off the board. You know, you have the combination of size and athleticism that NFL teams will look for. I think you can forget about playing at Toledo. It doesn't really matter. He's got the athletic profile of an NFL corner. Nate Wiggins, I think, could certainly end up being the first corner off the board, but I think Quinyon Mitchell is in that conversation now, and I think Terrion Arnold might have pushed himself up to the front of that conversation after such a great 2023. So finding out who CB1 is going to be a ton of fun. Do you like the upside of Nate Wiggins, who's the ultimate size and speed guy in this class? Do you like the technical ability of Terrion Arnold? Do you like the overall profile and developable traits of Quinyon Mitchell? It'll be interesting to see what NFL teams end up thinking and where these guys end up going. Right now, I'm pushing Quinyon Mitchell up the board. He's going to wear the same colors he did at Toledo with the Rams. They're very similar at least. Not that it matters. Steelers at 20. I've been offensive tackle for them a lot. I think center is certainly in play. Few had better Senior Bowls than Jackson Powers Johnson of Oregon. Could even play guard. He's got the size. He was about 320 pounds at 6'3". Depending on what team takes him, certainly move him to guard. He moves well enough on the interior, and he's got some power as well. So he's a player that is skyrocketing up boards. However, do the Steelers value a center here over a corner or over a tackle? That's the question, because I've been giving them Amarius Mims a lot. I think Jordan Morgan makes sense. I think Troy Fautanu makes sense. Could even play him on the interior, although unlikely to be a center the same way that a Graham Barton could make that transition, or certainly a center already. Zach Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, who we were just talking about. So what do we do here for the Steelers? Quinyon Mitchell just feels like a Steeler, but problem is he's off the board. Do I just keep giving them Amarius Mims? Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. I know I've done this quite a few times. It makes a lot of sense. He's a big-time athlete with, again, incredible size, the same way a lot of these guys do in this class. Listed at 6'7", 340 on Pro Football Focus here, and has pretty good movement skills for someone of that size, although he's not an exceptional mover. Another guy that's really strong. Here's why you're afraid of Amarius Mims. Here's why he doesn't go higher. He's only got about 8 starts under his belt. It's a bit of a red flag. Injury and just being buried on the depth chart in 2022 held him back, but in 2023, and really the end of the 2022 season, he emerges as a starter and plays very well. He's got NFL size, no question about that. It's just you kind of are taking that moldable piece of clay and you're trying to turn him into an all-pro type player. It's easier said than done. Of course, teammate of Broderick Jones at Georgia, who's now on the Steelers. I promise Steelers fans, I'm going to end up changing this and not just give you Amarius Mims every single mock draft, but you're getting a good player with tremendous upside and at a position of need with a storyline there. And there's no team that seems to love storylines more than the Steelers. Look at all the brother combos they have on the team. They have the Watts. They have the Herbigs, right? There are probably even more. And when you look at Joey Porter's son, Joey Porter Jr. being drafted, albeit they passed on him in the first and took him in the second at number 32. Of course, the Dolphins had their pick forfeited last year. I don't know. It makes a lot of sense. And I know he's not related to anybody, but teammate of the first round pick last year. Now you have your bookend tackles of the future who happen to be teammates. I don't know. It's certainly a possibility. He's good enough to get drafted there, I promise you. Dolphins at 21. I think I will end up going with Jackson Powers Johnson here, center out of Oregon. Dolphins might end up losing their starting center in free agency. That's former Texas tackle Connor Williams. Hook him. Jackson Powers Johnson has all the tools and traits to be a starting NFL center. Again, we mentioned it earlier. Incredible week at the Senior Bowl. He was dominant in the one-on-ones. He's got the size. He's got the movement skills. He's got the strength. He's able to anchor. He can do it all in the interior. He is a very good fit in the Dolphins offense, certainly prioritizing that movement ability. At number 22, have the Philadelphia Eagles, and I will end up going with Nate Wiggins here. They need help in the secondary. I could see this being an offensive tackle. I could see, any one of Fa'atanu, Morgan, Kingsley Suamataia. Those are options. But at the end of the day, the Philadelphia Eagles secondary is just not very good. I know they have a lot of guys you might know. Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo. Up at the top, you have James Bradbury, Darius Slay. You have a lot of questions about age. Wiggins certainly will solve some of those. He's not 30 plus like Slay or Bradbury. And he gives you a controllable asset for the future that you don't have to pay. Slay's still under contract, but you can get rid of James Bradbury. You can not have to worry about starting Eli Ricks or Keely Ringo. Could certainly see this not being a corner, and they just continue to develop the trenches. Maybe it's even a wide receiver as well. A guy like, Brian Thomas Jr. would make a tremendous amount of sense here. Maybe even want a jump ball guy in Keon Coleman or Adonai Mitchell. Maybe not Tez Walker at this point. Had a dreadful Senior Bowl. Now, at the end of the day, you value what you see on film more than what you see at a college all-star game, and even that week of practices, of course, which are probably more telling than anything. Walker really struggled to catch the football. I don't think it hurts his stock all that much. I think, oftentimes these all-star games don't do a ton for stock one way or another. Oftentimes you see guys rise more than they fall, or that's how it seems at least. But, I'm not sure that he was a first-round pick anyway. I think he still is probably a second-rounder. So did his stock really change all that much? I'm not sure. And with his ability to get open, like he showed at the Senior Bowl, maybe you're not even mad about it and think he had just had a tough week catching the ball. But And that really wasn't an issue when you watched him at UNC or even dating back to Kent State. So, again, I don't know. I think getting open is more important than anything. Obviously, receivers have to be able to catch the ball, but are you going to really take 1 week of practices, like really a few days, over what you saw in game and for an entire season or more if you watch back to Kent State? I don't know. Texans at 23. We got a fun one coming up here because it is the first linebacker off the board. It's Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. This is a fun one. Not only is he somewhat local, College Station down to Houston, not really that far of a trip, maybe an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. And Cooper might make it faster with his electric speed. No, he won't because he's not going to walk there. But yeah, really, really fast. He is someone that plays well in coverage, but can fly sideline to sideline. When you look at a DeMeco Ryans defense, historically, linebackers have played a huge role. And you look at all the talent that was available to DeMeco Ryans, former linebacker, by the way, with the 49ers, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shire, who's now in Tennessee, I know, but was there with DeMeco Ryans for the 49ers. Obviously, Fred Warner really sticks out. He was a third-round draft pick, I believe, out of BYU. Ends up becoming the best inside linebacker in football. We're right up there at 1 or 2, depending on how you feel about guys like Roquan Smith. He was incredible. Now, we saw the emergence of Christian Harris in the playoff game for the Texans, or even 2 of them, right? But Edgerrin Cooper offers you another option. We know you don't just go out there with one linebacker, and Cooper is as athletic as anyone, can really fly out there, and I think is a great fit for the DeMeco Ryans defense. And I heard, he was at the Shrine game, heard the Texans were doing some research on him. So there's also a connection there as well. Will that end up happening? Maybe, maybe not. I think Jerzon Newton is also an option. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is also an option. But Edgerrin Cooper is certainly a good option as well. And we often do see a linebacker get into the first round. And Cooper could potentially be that guy. I think he's the number 20 overall player on Daniel Jeremiah's big board as well. So if you value that, like I value that, said value word the first time, this is perfectly in line with his potential range. At number 24, had the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm going to get out in front of this one because Cowboys fans are going to think that me as a Giants fan am mocking them a bad player, and then it will happen in real life. And then I don't know what the logic on that is. Oh, you hate the Cowboys, you give them a bad player. Certainly not. However, I am going to reach down the Pro Football Focus big board here a little bit and give them Zach Frazier from West Virginia. I know this might be a bit early. However, with the first center off the board, if you don't think that Graham Barton can go inside to play center, you might take Zach Frazier. Now, I kept saying going down the board to take a bad player. Zach Frazier is not a bad player. That's the big thing. He is a starting center in the NFL right away. And for a team like the Cowboys, who has historically prioritized offensive line and not cared about going down the consensus big board to take a player that they like, this makes a ton of sense. You take a guy like Tyler Smith out of Tulsa a couple of years ago. Seemed a little bit early to take Tyler Smith. Certainly. He was a development type prospect that wasn't going to be ready to go right away. Well, guess what? They developed him, and he's become one of the best left guards in football. You get a guy like Zach Frazier, who could probably start right away at center, a position of need. You might opt to do that in the draft. Now, there are a number of different ways the Cowboys could approach this, and they could go Graham Barton instead if they wanted to address the offensive line, or they could go Jordan Morgan, or Troy Fautanu, or Kingsley Suamataia, maybe even Patrick Paul to play left tackle over Tyron Smith in the future, or even play him at right tackle for right now if you can get Tyron Smith to come back for a year. Zach Frazier could start right away at center. It's a position of need, and the Cowboys have gone down the board to take the player they liked before. It's happened a lot, actually. So I really am not mad about that selection at all. I think it makes sense. Is it too early for Zach Frazier that could still be available well into the second round? Absolute possibility as well, but experimenting with that today and pushing him up the board. It makes sense. We'll see if it's a bit too high. It certainly might be, but that's the right team to take him at 24. He is definitely a future NFL center. Starting center, no question about it. Again, good movement skills, but just does the right thing when you watch him. He's a guy that gets to his landmarks and is capable of driving defensive linemen and linebackers in the run game. He's a good player. Don't want to justify it too much more than that. I think it works. You're welcome to hate on it. I'm okay with it. I'll sleep pretty well tonight. At number 25, had the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama. Now, I haven't heard anyone mention this, but based on watching Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think the transition to safety could make a ton of sense for him. I don't know how well he's going to test, but I know he's a good athlete overall. That's not just how fast you can run. You know, that doesn't determine whether you're a good athlete or not. However, he's got tremendous patience. He's good in zone coverage. He tackles pretty well. Sounds like a safety. So I think for a team that's looking to upgrade their secondary, regardless, it's not just safety, it's cornerback as well. You could take Kool-Aid McKinstry, try him at corner, move him back to safety, move him around. I don't care what you do. They have holes in the secondary. Kool-Aid McKinstry could potentially fill multiple, or you could, you know, fit one or the other. Obviously, taking a corner and saying, hey, go play safety. I don't know if they're going to do that in the first round, but there's not really a safety worth taking in the first round. You're looking probably at the first safety off the board being Tyler Nubin from Minnesota. Cam Kinchin's maybe in that conversation. I could see Javon Bullard as well, or even Kalen Bullock, really. Although I'm a little bit lower on Bullock, but I don't think a safety gets into the first round this year. But McKinstry, if you wanted to move him back to safety, could be an option, but they also need help at corner. He could also play corner. He's athletic enough to do it. We've seen him play corner at a high level, but his zone ability and patience as a corner makes me think could be a safety. At number 26, have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I got Brian Thomas Jr. here out of LSU. Yeah, question marks with Mike Evans returning long-term. Certainly not something that is guaranteed. He's getting older as it is anyway. He was drafted back in 2014, which was 10 years ago, which sounds crazy because that was the Odell Beckham Jr. draft. That was the Sammy Watkins draft, Khalil Mack, Jadeveon Clowney, Teddy Bridgewater, who just retired. That's how long ago it was. And how long can you count on Mike Evans? Really solid, reliable player, but you need to look beyond him. And yes, you have Chris Godwin. What else? Are you relying? And I know, there are some names, Trey Palmer, but that's not stopping you from taking a receiver in the first round. Could be any number of different things. They need help on the interior of their offensive line, for sure. I could see them taking a tackle. I could see them taking an edge rusher. Corner, certainly a big position need, but Brian Thomas Jr., I think, is also a solid fit for them as well. And also, maybe just the best player available. I always want to move Brian Thomas Jr. up the board, but I just haven't been able to give any of these teams a receiver, you know, after the Bears. I think maybe the Jets could, but is it too early for Brian Thomas Jr.? I'm not actually sure that it is. I'm not sure that it is, but it's just tackle makes more sense for a lot of these teams. But yeah, he always falls, and he's probably too good to be available here. Steal for Tampa. At number 27, have the Arizona Cardinals. We know they took Marvin Harrison Jr. earlier in the draft. And I will tell you, my first iteration of this had Leatu Latu falling to 27, and that's who they scooped up. This time around, I'm eyeing Jerzon Newton. I think that makes a ton of sense. But I also think the tackle could be in play. I think it's in play at 4, depending on if Marvin Harrison Jr. gets there. And I also think it's, of course, in play at 27. I'm going to go Troy Fautanu. Could be a future starting tackle in the league. Could also move inside to guard. Gives you some flexibility, and it's a position of need, and it's a good player. Again, I usually draft him at 16 to the Seahawks. He's fallen all the way down to 27. Seems like a no-brainer for the Cardinals. At number 28, I like Keon Coleman here. I do Keon Coleman at this spot a lot, but it just fits what I think the Bills should be looking for at receiver. A big jump ball guy. You know, he goes up and wins the football, what we call it when you can high point it and come down with it in contested catch situations. He is a ball winner. And if you pair that with Josh Allen, that's something he really has not had. And he's a guy that likes to throw it up. And hey, It'd be nice if a guy could actually come down with it, because you really haven't had that with a number of receivers that they're throwing out there. I like Khalil Shakir in the slot. That's fine. Typically, those slot receivers are not going to be jump ball guys. Stephon Diggs, I think, has taken a step back. Doesn't mean he's bad, but I don't know that he was quite the player that we saw a few years ago. And Gabe Davis is not only a free agent, but up and down, I think we can say about Gabe Davis. Some days he has it, some days he does not. Keon Coleman, to me, just makes a ton of sense. I'm going to do it. I think Adonai Mitchell, for a lot of those same reasons, makes sense as well. But Keon Coleman today, no Texas bias, right? At number 29, the Lions just have a knack of taking good players. Jerzon Newton is a good player. He lives in the backfield. If you watch him at Illinois, he was always getting into the backfield either on run plays or disrupting the passer. Really good player. The Lions could use an upgrade on the interior of both lines. Frank Ragnow might actually be retiring due to a number of injuries. Not saying that's going to happen, but it's a possibility. He's got a number of lingering things. Played through injury last year. Maybe decides to hang it up. And you could also use an upgrade at guard. You can look at the contract situations as well with Graham Glasgow and the injury situations with Jonah Jackson. They could potentially go with a guard or a center, as we talked about the Frank Ragnow, and Graham Barton would make sense there, or even Zach Frazier if he got there. But Jerzon Newton might just be, hey, this guy's falling. He's a really good player. We're going to snatch him up at 29. At number 30, have the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to get a big Senior Bowl riser in there. I've been tackle a lot recently, and I could certainly see it. Jordan Morgan makes a ton of sense there to me. Can't really rely on Ronnie Stanley with his injuries at this point. And then Morgan Moses long-term. Tackle's certainly in play, but so is defensive line. If you can't bring back Justin Madubuike, you've got a major, major hole on the interior, and you might also have holes on the edge. Can you rely on, well, obviously, Odafe Owe is penciled in. I'll say that. Can you rely on Jadeveon Clowney long-term? Had a big season for Baltimore. Maybe isn't there in 2024, 2025. We'll have to see what happens, right? But David Ojabo, injury history. Is he going to be an every down player? Well, we're going to fix that. And we're going to go with Darius Robinson from Mizzou. I know his average draft position is 100. Trevor Sikkema, who runs this, moved him up the board a ton. And this is a guy who has been on the brink of being a top, 50 or 60 player. I think Daniel Jeremiah had him at 30 or something close. I know Dane Brugler had him up in that range as well, and was dominant at the Senior Bowl. This is a guy who could end up getting into the first round. It may be a little bullish on him right now, but he could end up being a first-round player. Inside-outside flexibility, he is big. 6'5", about 300 pounds, that can win off the edge, no less. So you have a guy that can play on the interior as well, and I talked about this in one of my recent videos. I'm a big pass rush win rate guy. I know not everybody is. I don't really know why. All that it says is, hey, were you able to defeat your blocker in a pass rush situation? That's pretty telling of how good of a pass rusher you are. I don't get why people don't like it. Obviously, you want to finish the play and get sacks. However, if you can force the football out early or let your teammates get sacks by forcing pressure on the QB, maybe he steps up into a defensive tackle, maybe he's forced to try to run out of the pocket and an edge player sacks him, or a linebacker or a looper or whatever. That's still incredibly valuable. People still overvalue the sack number. Team sacks are important. Sacks are drive killers. But individual sacks are not necessarily a good testament of how good of a pass rusher you are. It's not. I'm a big pass rush win rate guy. Darius Robinson posts pretty good numbers at both 3-tech, 5-tech, and wider than that. I think Brett Coleman tweeted out his pass rush win rate at different techniques on the line, starting from that 3-tech and working out to the offensive tackle, and then even beyond that at times. This is a guy who, if he gets on a runway, can bulldoze offensive tackles, and we saw that at the Senior Bowl. He was amazing in one-on-ones and could end up being a first-round player. Ravens could go tackle, could go receiver here as well. Going with the versatile defensive lineman out of Mizzou, Darius Robinson. At number 31, Kansas City Chiefs. I like my guy Adonai Mitchell here. Hook him. Great season for Texas. Incredible movement skills for his size. You know, he's 6'3" or 6'4", about 205 pounds. I think 196 is a little bit light. I think he's closer to 205. But moves like he's 196, and maybe he still is. But I thought he was a little bit heavier. But incredible movement skills. He's fluid on the field. Could be a little bit more precise with his routes, but is deceptively fast. Long strider that can get down the field. And I wish he was more involved in the Texas offense this past year. But whenever they needed a touchdown, throw it to Adonai, A.D. Mitchell, it's a touchdown. He can win the jump ball as well as almost anyone. I think Keon Coleman probably a little bit more consistent. He's a freak like I've never seen. But Adonai Mitchell is right up in that conversation. You need a jump ball guy to go up and catch the football. Adonai Mitchell is your guy. Right there in that conversation. And the Chiefs, they've had unreliable catchers in the receiving game. Can't rely on Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. Adonai Mitchell is an outside receiver that can catch the football. And wrapping up the first round, we'll have a 2-round mock draft at some time in the next month, I would expect. We got the 49ers. Now, I'm big on offensive line here for them. I'm big on offensive line. This could also be and I said this last one, but someone didn't understand, tweeted at me calling me an idiot. This could be a team trading up for a quarterback. Not the 49ers being that team. A team could trade up to 32 with the 49ers, take their pick, and then draft a quarterback. Maybe Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. I'm going to let the 49ers stick and pick here. And it's offensive line or corner. I agree with the team needs. Do you like Kamari Lassiter or Ennis Rakestraw here maybe? Or do you think that Graham Barton being available is too good a value to pass on? Or even Jordan Morgan? And I think we're going to end up going Graham Barton. Could stick at tackle. Is expected to make a move inside. Overall, good offensive lineman that has versatility to play a number of different spots on the O-line. Ends up sneaking into the first round here. And the 49ers have taken a Duke offensive lineman in the first round before. Shout out Laken Tomlinson. That is my first round mock draft. Again, 2-round mock draft will be coming sometime this month. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.